Secret underground areas. The zone is filled with them, from abandoned Soviet laboratories to basements full of mutants. The tunnels around Chernobyl and Pripyat hold many secrets and display a perfectly crafted atmosphere. While exploring these locations, surely you must have noticed that they are not completely dark, as some lights are still working. Also, strange devices such as psi-emitters and other antennas are somehow still in activity. How is this possible? Hello Stalkers, and welcome to the Anomalous Dugout. In this video we will investigate what I believe to be the biggest mystery from the zone's underground locations. How are all these systems still being powered? Where does the energy come from? From my exploration I found out that all the underground locations, without exception, are somehow still supplied in energy. First of all, we have the simple systems like some of the lights and some of the ventilation fans. I insist on saying some of them because it is obvious that not all of them are working. It appears that the facilities are running on emergency mode, as only some of the less powerful lights are turned on, while other machines like the elevators are down. Also, a fellow stalker told me that the ventilation fans are not really being powered, because they would turn much faster if it was the case. Instead, it seems that a natural flow of air would be responsible for their slow rotation. To that I respond, yes, you are absolutely right, at least in most cases. This fan, for example, looks to be spinning because of a natural flow. Yet this is not always true. For instance, this thing, whatever it is clearly powered. So despite the fact that many systems are either broken or deactivated, I conclude that electricity is being provided nonetheless. You can even distinctively hear the buzzing sound of some machines in X18, like in this inaccessible technical room, for example. Then there are what appear to be infinite leaks of steam or pressurized air found in some of the labs. This could be because steam is still being produced and pumped into these pipes, or it could be a rare type of anomaly. I mean, we already have a few permanent burners as well as the steam burners from the boiler anomaly, so why not? The exact same thing could be said about the heaters in the red shafts located in X10. In fact, it is also possible that some of the light bulbs are powered by anomalous energy. If the zone can create electro-anomalies, surely it can give a bit of power to these lights. However, we still have much more massive and complex machines, mainly the biological psi-emitter in X16, the pumping station that drains underground waters in the Agroprom, the Kamenov antennas of the Brain Scorcher, and the Monolith device. All of these surely consume a tremendous amount of energy. So where does the power come from? One of the most widespread beliefs is that some of the nuclear reactors at the Chernobyl power plant are still in activity, being maintained and operated by the allies of the Sea Consciousness and the Monolith faction. This idea comes from the fact that in the original Russian version, the Sea Consciousness representative clearly states that the power plant was used to supply energy to the secret laboratories, and the presence of the plant was one of the reasons why the experiments were carried out here, in the Chernobyl zone. Strangely, this quote did not make it into the English version of the game. However, we do not know if the power plant is still running at the time of Shadow of Chernobyl. A lot of time passed since the labs were established, And the zone also withstood a second disaster, the birth of the Anomalous zone. Further, in real life the reactors were all shut down long before 2012. So let's take a look at some real data and history concerning the power station, shall we? When the first disaster occurred, there were 4 active reactors and 2 others in the process of being built. The construction was abandoned because of the 1986 catastrophe, so reactors 5 and 6 were never finished. However, the other 3 remaining reactors continued to work for several years. Reactor 2 was shut down in 1991 following a turbine problem. Then reactors 1 and 3 were shut down in 1996 and 2000 respectively. Since the story of S.T.A.L.K.E.R takes place in a world similar to ours, but in a slightly different timeline, it is not hard to imagine that some of the reactors could have been used for a longer time, especially since they were providers for the laboratories. Nevertheless, even if energy is still being produced at the power plant, it has to be delivered to the rest of the zone via power lines. While these electrical lines are found in many places in the zone, we can clearly see that most parts of the network are out of order. Some cables are broken, others simply missing. Furthermore, some locations don't even have any lines whatsoever, like the Dark Valley for example. Perhaps there is another secret electrical network that goes underground. It would not be too surprising since there are literal roads and train stations down there, but many tunnels have collapsed, so I'm not convinced that this network would be usable either. So we have yet to learn for sure if all the underground locations are really still supplied by the CMPP. Because of this, many theories have been made. Let's take a look at some of them. First of all, if the energy is not produced in a central station and then distributed to all the different locations, then it means that it is produced locally. It is definitely possible that every underground area has its own energy source. These could take the form of pretty much anything that makes electricity and is running on fossil fuels, such as generators or gas turbines. The problem with this theory is that the underground locations have been abandoned for a few years. If the systems had been running all this time on stored fuel, the supply would have probably run out. Unless some of the large tanks found around the area were completely filled with the fuel, who knows. Also, without maintenance and repairs, it is certain that some of the machines should have broken down. Indeed, we know that the generators for the elevators in both the underpass and X8 were out of order, and they had to be repaired by stalkers to allow access to these locations again. Even the light bulbs themselves usually don't have a long enough lifetime to last for several years of constant shining. Or do they? Perhaps the lamps used were made to last more than usual. Instead, I have another idea in mind. The Agroprom tunnel system is one of the most interesting underground locations, because it is featured in both Clear Sky and Shadow of Chernobyl. Because of this, we can observe the evolution of the area, and it turns out that a lot of intriguing things have changed. In Clear Sky, a large portion of the area was inaccessible, blocked by metal bars and locked doors, and we can clearly see that this part of the catacombs is in complete darkness. In Shadow of Chernobyl, these corridors have been recovered thanks to the work of diggers, the people from Mole's group, who broke inside to explore the tunnels. Strangely, New sources of lights have appeared in the areas that have been opened. Therefore, I wonder if it was the diggers who actually activated these lamps to make their job easier. Back to clear sky, the duty base can be seen using a truck engine for power. Since the dutiers went into the underground, they might have connected their energy source to the local electrical grid in order to get some light down there. We can also find other generators in several areas, such as the loner base in the cordon. What I'm trying to say is, it is possible that stalkers who wish to explore the underground locations were the ones who supplied it with electricity. For example, we know that the bandits were very interested in going down in X-18, same for the mercenaries in X-8. And more importantly, the Monolith faction visited both the testing workshop and the Pripyat underpass, giving them a good reason for connecting the place to an energy source. According to another interesting theory, the underground locations are powered by a new kind of technology that only exists in the world of S.T.A.L.K.E.R, most likely a discovery that was made in the zone and using the energy from anomalies and artifacts. We already know that the scientists working in the labs studied the artifacts and utilized them to create a revolutionary type of batteries for the Gauss rifle. Moreover, we can see a glimpse of such a technology in the Monolith Control Center, where the illusion of the Wish Granter appears to be powered by futuristic-looking devices. Going even further, some speculate that the Sea Consciousness uses the contraption known as the generators to directly draw from the power of the noosphere, the informational field responsible for the anomalies and the emissions. Sure, all of this sounds very sci-fi, especially compared to the state of the labs that look old and dilapidated. But the contrast between brand new technology and old Soviet equipment did work out pretty well in the Monolith Control Center, so why not? Now, there is one final theory which involves electromagnetics. I don't want to dive into scientific stuff, but basically, in certain conditions, magnetic fields can generate electricity. For example, alternators use rotating magnets to create current. Since we have radiation, anti-gravitation, static electricity and many other anomalous things in the zone, I would not be surprised if some invisible magnetic anomalies exist. In fact, it is mentioned by Professor Herman that there is something strange going on with the magnetic field inside the zone, which appears to be weakening. That detail makes me believe that the zone is indeed surrounded by an unusual magnetic field that could be responsible for providing electricity to some of the less powerful equipment. This field could either be of anomalous origin, or it could have been created by the scientists in the center, maybe with the help of the generators? Who's to say? Before ending this video, I would like to recap and conclude. These are the main ideas that were brought up. The nuclear power plant still working, anomalous energy powering the lights, generators both from the labs themselves and from stalkers being used, new technologies based on the power of anomalies and artifacts, and perhaps a link with magnetic fields. As you can see, there are many theories and possibilities, but we honestly don't have enough information to get the full picture. In my opinion, the reality is probably a mix of all the elements that were discussed, as each location has its own unique situation going on. Besides, there is a good chance that we will see new underground laboratories in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, so it's possible we will get more answers then. In the meantime, I would love to read about your own thoughts and theories, so make sure you leave a comment down below. Thanks a lot for watching, and good hunting, Stalkers.